In my lecture, I will be seeking the answer to the following question: whether the modern interpretation of human rights provides as solid as a foundation as it seems at first glance. And I was given the title by Father Jaroslav, and I felt from the very beginning that it is a great title. However, I felt also that I kind of must approach it from the direction of a different concept, that of identity. And because nowadays a lot is said about the crisis of European identity. It has become such a commonplace of sort. However, for most people, the European identity, which is supposedly in crisis and seems to be so important for many, escapes definition. And this is why I was so glad when I saw that here in this very conference, an individual panel was dedicated to the topic of identity, which is, I think it's crucial. However, please let me share my own views about identity. Of course, it is self-evident that an identity is a collection of those factors which define an individual. But what factors are those? In my interpretation, any individual that ever lived in the course of history defined himself in a three-part system. The first step, and this is the foundation, the basics, everything is built on this, the relationship between the individual and the transcendental, the sacred, if you like. And you know, as I do, that a human being with his mere mind can recognize the necessity of God's existence. Hence, the relationship between the individual, so the mankind, of humans, let's say, and the transcendental is older than Christianity, is older than Judaism. It's even older than the point of time when God revealed himself to mankind, because people were always aware of some kind of transcendental. So this is why we can say with confidence that any man that ever lived or will live, the cornerstone, the basis, the foundation of his identity was his faith. The second step, it is built on the first step, is the relationship between the individual and his smallest, his tightest circle. Let it be his family, of course. And this is why this is built on the first step, because marriage has always been something more than an economic union. It has always been something like sacred, transcendental. The third step of any identity, of any man who ever lived or will live, is the relationship between the individual and his larger community, be it a city or a region, or be it a nation or a nation state. Thus, through these three steps, the transcendental, the family, and the nation or nation state, any individual can and could identify himself. Let me give you an example. I am a Roman Catholic. This is the first level of my identity. I am married to my wife. I am father to my child, soon my children. This is the second level of my identity. And on the third level, I'm a proud Hungarian. This is my identity. This is how I identify myself. So when we try to pinpoint, to describe what makes European identity, we will find that until the very recent time, historically speaking, so until the most recent times, most of the Europeans were Christian, based their family life on the Christian family model, and they were either citizens or subjects to their nation state, to their state. It is no longer true, however. European identity has changed a lot. It has become corrupted. And the corruption of it was carried out step by step. The first step was, of course, the deconstruction of the fundamental element, the relationship between the individual and the transcendental. So the denial of God's existence. Everything was based on this, and once this subversion succeeded, everything else became simple. If there is no creator, there is no creation. So it cannot be true that God created man and woman who came together in a sacred union. Everybody is free to decide whether they want to be man or woman, or maybe something entirely different. Say a panda or a dolphin. Come on, dolphins are so cute. Don't you want to be a dolphin? So you may think it's a joke. However, unfortunately, it's not. Gender studies, as they call, it distinguishes between some hundreds of different genders, and the number is growing day by day. So at a very certain point of time, they will reach the point when they will be kind of out of genders. So these trans dolphin identity or trans panda identity will come into reality. So we will leave it. And of course, this nullifies the sacred union of a man and a woman, and thus fell the second bastion of identity, the family. The third and final stronghold of identity is the nation state. Its deconstruction is ongoing. Lack of time prevents me from going into details, so I will just mention a couple of tools and methods which is used to deconstruct the concept, the theory of nation states. For example, mass migration to undermine the homogeneous population of nation states. Or another point, and a couple of you reached upon this subject, is international courts, or like NGOs. They act in concert together to undermine nation state, and once they succeeded, nothing will left of European identity. This is the third and final stronghold of European identity, and once it's fell, nothing will be left which make us to call ourselves Europeans. I beg your pardon for this long introduction. I realize that I do not even touch upon the subject of human rights, but I hope you will soon understand why identity is so important. So before reaching human rights, just to summarize, I have described the three-part nature of identity: the transcendental, small community, larger community, and according to my interpretation, this definition applies to every human being who ever lived or will ever live. Because it is my firm conviction that it applies to today's man who abandoned his faith. And of course, you might say that the deconstruction of Christianity resulted in a society which is atheist. So the relationship to the transcendental cannot be the cornerstone of modern identity. Nevertheless, I will try to make you understand why I believe that it still is. According to my interpretation, in modern identity, the principle of human rights has replaced the sacred as the first step of identity. This is the basis of everything. It is a religion of the modern man. However, it is a religion without the sacred. This might sound strange at first, since religion is a moral category, while human rights are rooted, in theory at least, in law. However, this is not the case in my interpretation. I just try to describe why so. So the function of a legal norm is to create balance, justice, if you like. It's very easy. For instance, if somebody should cause material damage, he must pay restitution. If somebody should commit a crime, he will go to prison. And if somebody should avoid taxes, the state will not only collect it, but will fine the individual as well. In other words, if something A happens, then B must follow. So it's like cause and effect. This is how legal norms work. Human rights, however, are different. There is no cause and effect. There is no A and B. We are entitled to some things without any precondition. We have the right to vote. We have the right to express our thoughts. And more recently and more sadly, a man can live as a woman can live as a man, even as a panda. And Timotheus reached this, that according to what happened in Nairobi, very soon she will even have the right to kill her child. We did nothing for these prerogatives. We are just entitled to them. This has nothing to do with the nature of law, which seeks balance or justice. This is more like a moral code. We have the right, a moral code which tells what is good and, of course, what is evil. We have the right to vote because democracy is good. We can express our opinions because a variety of options, of opinions, is good. And it will sound monstrous within the walls of this university, but a woman has the right to live as a man, and the man as a woman, because it's good. Not according to me, of course, but according to modern identity. And since modern identity considers these things to be good, then it follows that their opposites must be evil. And of course, the state must act against evil. I don't want to waste more time on this. I really hope you got my point. Monsieur Gregory Pouping, I know it rings the bell for some of you. Last year, he wrote a brilliant book on this topic. It comes highly recommended. But the point is that the regime of human rights is the modern religion. This has replaced Christianity in Europe as the cornerstone of modern identity. Yuval Noah Harari, his name was mentioned a couple of times today. He's a contemporary Israeli author, one of the most popular thinkers of our day. And his conclusion is very similar to mine. So even, let's say, liberal philosophy recognizes that humanist religion, this is how Harari describes it. I call it human rightism or human right fundamentalism, replaced Christianity. And this is, of course, despite the fact that his approach to life and mine, they are diametrically opposite. So I'm a believer and he's a devout atheist. According to my belief, that the fact that man was created causes his need for some form of religion, a system which he adopts with all of his heart, which forms a coordinate system or a general guide to his life for every single aspect of life. Therefore, although they might have subverted Christianity, man's need for religion remained the same. And this is where human rights or human rightism came into the picture. This is how it became the modern religion. And just like Christianity, or like every other religion which carries a moral code, tells to its followers what is good and what is evil, human rights, they are just acting the very same manner. So this is the new religion, the transcendent without the sacred. I will skip some part to save some time. Just like in the case of traditional European identity, every other element rests on this very first step. Family, as the tightest circle of community, in its modern interpretation, is almost unrecognizable. It is a family in name only and has nothing to do with the Christian concept. For a modern humanist, the sacred union of a man and a woman is incomprehensible. For him, there is no woman, there is no man, and there is no sacred. The elevation of same-sex marriage to the level of fundamental rights has been accomplished in most of the developed countries. And the thought of what comes next really terrifies me. And family is not even a true defining element for their identity. It's only relevant for them to deconstruct family in order to subvert traditional identity. In my interpretation, the true second step of modern identity, which replaces family, is a collection of mini-communities or quasi-communities, which are built around some pseudo-transcendental element. For instance, environmentalism. It is important for us to see that it also springs from human rights as well. It is an extension of the right to a healthy environment. Why did I use the word pseudo-transcendental? Because I think that the devotion, the enthusiasm that characterize those people who fight with a focus on environmentalism is the same fanatism that grips believers as well, believers of traditional religions as well. I think there's no profane or worldly phenomenon which brings such a fanatism. There's always has to be something transcendental in the background. In the case of environmentalism, it is Mother Nature or Mother Earth, as they call it. It is very important they anthropomorphize. So they endow with human or even with divine characteristic things which has no personality at all. So to put them into the center of their attention and bow down to them. It becomes a miniature God for them. And we Christians, we have a word for this. This is idolatry, the adoration of fake gods. And ever since the ancient Christian times, moreover, ever since the ancient Jewish times, it has been the most hateful of sins, blasphemy. And this is what the second level of their identity is based. All of these are idols, so it's not only about environmentalism, but the same adoration surrounds LGBTQ plus IPA, whatever rights. And I could give you a couple of other examples. The third level of modern identity is humanity. Think it with all shiny capital letters. This is what replaced the third element of traditional or European identity, the nation or the nation state. It is being replaced by global humanity. In order to make the substitution, it is evident that they have to deconstruct the nation state. It is important for us to see that this is also based on the central element of modern identity, the human rights. Monsieur Alain Pellet, a French law professor, back in the late 70s, he called it human rightism. And we at the Center for Fundamental Rights, we refer to this phenomena as human right fundamentalism, but our point is the same. So the globalization of human rights is the key to this process. Because you know as well as I do that these rights know no borders. From a pragmatic point of view, of course, it means, for the geopolitical realist, if you like, that any violation or infringement of these universal rights served as a cause for military intervention. However, from the point of view of identity, it means that nation states are no longer needed, as they are irrelevant from the aspect of human rights. Moreover, nation state became such a roadblock of human right fundamentalism because the legal framework of individual states may fulfill these universal rights with a different content. For the modern man, for the modern identity, it would be much better to have only international organizations, and if they have like some kind of a monopoly to interpret these rights. Thus, as a summary, these are the three elements of modern identity. The religion of human rights replacing Christianity. The second step is the, let's say, redefined family, and the communities congregating around idols, fake gods, if you like, which are often, these communities are often unreal, meaning that they are only exist on internet. And the third element, of which replaced or is replacing nation state, is global humanity. All three rest on the foundation of human rights. It is the basis of the entire concept of modern identity. In the introduction of this lecture, I promised that we will get to the question of how stable a foundation this is. Well, the answer is obvious, I think. It is as stable as anything that is deprived from its elemental principle. A religion without the sacred, so it cannot be stable. The traditional European identity, which had Christianity in its focus point, is built on a clear system. Its foundation is that the moral principles that guide us are not derived from us men. So man fits within the hierarchy of creation, meaning that even though man is clearly the crown of creation, at the top of the hierarchy we will find God. The guiding system of modern identity, however, lacks such an order. The rules are elastic as they were created by man. There is no creation, and consequently, there is no hierarchy. If man does not have a distinguished role within the hierarchy, so why should he have special rights? It is all kickstarting a process whose end we cannot foresee, but Harari, you know, he has some point of this about humanity is being replaced by some kind of, some of you even touched this topic, so algorithms and some kind of an AI and cyborgs and so on and so on. Finally, let me have a couple of words on human rights, because as far it may seem to you that I'm against human rights, but what I believe in is geometrically the opposite. So I'm really for human rights. However, I'm against, from all of my heart, against human rightism, because the right, the proper interpretation of human rights, I believe that they are deeply rooted back in Christianity. So just think about human dignity or the equality of humans. So it can only be interpreted in a Christian worldview. And this is why I think that the right interpretation has a very special place in Christian worldview. But, you know, human dignity and equality, they are self-evident, but let's say environmentalism, because previously I mentioned that this has become some kind of a fake God. But even the right interpretation of this rooted back in Christianity. So like, of course, we cannot accept the theory of Mother Earth, of Mother Nature, and yet the self-serving destruction of environment, be it like torturing animals, it's if you think about it, it's some kind of a rebellion against creation, hence the creator himself. So it's a rebellion against God. So environmental protection is the right interpretation, and it is deeply rooted back to Christianity, while environmentalism is an idol, a fake God. So it's something to avoid. I ran out of time, so I cannot give you further examples. I really hope that you got my point, which is, to summarize, that the right interpretation of human rights is not only valuable from a Christian point of view, but also necessary in order to organize our society. Human rightism, however, is not only the adoration of fake gods, the torture of the original meaning of these rights, but also leads us to a society which is unprecedented in history. A society which is not only proud of being atheist, but threatening the future of human race. Thank you very much.